Destiny 2 has finally broken from the clutches of Battle.net and is on Steam. It is free to play, so check out these benchmarks. Keep in mind with these benchmarks, I did run them at the farm location with a whole bunch of player characters on the screen. This is probably the most intensive benchmark I could possibly do that was consistent. And I believe that these are more like 90th percentile kind of averages rather than what you're going to see in the game. In the game, you'll see much higher frame rates usually. Anyways, let's move on to the first benchmarks, which is 720p low. And the 570 is doing pretty good. This is probably the recommended settings for the 570. I'm sure you can tune it a little bit better to get to 60 frames a second. However, it's a really old card at this point. It's playing Destiny 2. I think that's about all I can ask from it. The 760 is a little bit more modern, and it's pulling a nice safe 78 frames a second. At the highest settings, the 760 is at comfortable 45 frames a second. It's still plenty playable. The 570 is unplayable at highest settings on 720p. It's just too much for it. It's too old. Let's move on. 1080p load, the 970 is now in the lineup, and it is at 100 frames a second. This really demonstrates the power of the 970 over either of the other cards. And wow, the 760 is still doing pretty good, a solid 61 frames a second. Now, because Destiny 2 looks so good on low settings, this is my recommended setting for the 760 on Destiny 2. It just looks great, it runs great. This is a really good frame rate, really good setting. Anyways, moving on. So now we're at the highest settings. The 970 is still pulling at 59 frames a second. This is my recommended spec for the 970. The game looks absolutely beautiful and it runs almost completely rock solid at this setting. The 760 is pretty much unplayable. The 570 is on fire. Okay, 1440p. We now have the 1080 Ti and we have dropped the 570. 1080 Ti on low settings is killing it at 135 frames a second. The 970s struggling a little bit with 78. The 760s at 46, still playable, which is actually impressive for such a little card. 1440p on Destiny 2, that's about all I can ask from it, right? .1440p highest. The 1080 Ti is killing it at 96 frames a second. The 970 is starting to struggle just a little bit. I believe the VRAM is really starting to conflict here. However, it's still plenty playable at 46 frames a second, but don't expect to play competitively. The 760 is unplayable at 28. And finally, onto the 4K benchmarks. 4K low. 1080 Ti just killing it at 115 frames a second. Nothing can stop this card. It is blazing fast. High refresh rate monitors. 1080 Ti, great combo. The 970 is perfectly playable at 50 frames a second, which for a card that is this old and is a 70 series, very impressive. So Destiny 2 highest settings 4K, 1080 Ti, 62 frames a second. A perfect number because that is rock solid. You may dip below that in a very crazy fight in a very busy area. However, 90% of your gameplay will be perfectly butter smooth and beautiful. 970 on the other hand, not playable. And anyways, that's it. I hope you enjoyed these benchmarks. Please comment below if you have any games you want me to benchmark. I will do my best to benchmark them. Hopefully I own the game. If not, I'll make it work. Anyways, I'm Steven. This is Techdive. I'll see you all next time.